or you would boil in the sun. And it was just like, that did not help their war effort. The fact, and they won anyways, but the fact that the men had extremely, extremely difficult and uncomfortable positions in the tank, and it was not well built and so on, that does affect the war effort. The primitive equipment also stretched the physical endurance, All these elements contributed to heavy losses of men and machines. Despite these drawbacks, the new equipment gave an added dimension of effectiveness to the NVA's war machine. That's true. Doesn't matter if the cannons were only able to fire for 20 shots instead of an American howitzer might do 500 shots. Doesn't matter. They got 20 shots out of the thing, you know, and it was 20 more than they were able to put before long range. So we're going to talk about a few of the things. Let's talk about the 130 millimeter field gun first. The Russian-built 130 millimeter M46 field gun outranged the standard U.S. 155 millimeter. Right, so we got 155, they've got 130, so it's smaller, but they've put a bigger pack behind it. It goes further, a bigger charge. It could knock out an opposing cannon at more than 27,000 meters, well beyond the range of all but the few 175 millimeter guns the South Vietnamese possessed. So there were guns on the South that could do it, but not very many. So the result of that is that if they could find our artillery banks, they could hit our artillery banks and we couldn't return fire. Alright. Built in China as the Type 59, the 133 millimeter was towed by a tractor which could move it even along jungle trails. Requiring only 15 minutes of preparation for movement, the guns were shifted often, making them hard to spot. If located and attacked, the sites usually were well protected by SA-7 anti-aircraft missiles. And that's going to be the next item we're going to discuss. So there you go. They didn't have very many of these guns. They actually had to keep a tractor in working order to keep them moving, and good luck with that with the North Vietnamese Army. But it did give them that extra dimension of effectiveness. Now about this anti-aircraft missile, the SA-7 Strela, or Grail, heat-seeking missile, and its launcher weighed only 23 pounds, enabling even the smallest NVA infantryman in the unit to carry an anti-aircraft weapon. So just about everybody in the thing could have an anti-aircraft weapon. The handheld missile honed in on the heat of an aircraft's exhaust, accelerated to about Mach 1.3, broke the sound barrier, and was effective to a height of 3,200 meters, although hits were made at greater altitudes. Strelas did the greatest damage against slow propeller-driven aircraft and helicopters, and were most dangerous when fired in salvos. In other words, 2 or 3 of them fired at once at an airplane or a helicopter. The missile could often be failed when the target aircraft dropped flares, climbed into the sun, or flew the nap of the earth to confuse the Strela with other sources of heat. And they've also got that stuff chaff, which doesn't allow the radar to, it jams, just the missile can't go through chaff. Strips of aluminum, shiny strips of aluminum. Okay, these are things that the North Vietnamese didn't have at the beginning of the war. Now, MacArthur said he wanted to invade China and was very quickly fired. So we made that decision a long time ago. China's the one backing this, Russia's the one backing this. We're not going to fight them, though. Okay. Of course, we produced Russia. We gave Russia just about everything it had during World War II. So it goes back to FDR's situation there. If we would have invaded Russia and Germany instead of, I mean, look, Russia invaded Poland. Why didn't we declare war on Russia? Or why didn't Britain declare war on Russia anyway? It invaded Poland. And then, if we would have done that, then there wouldn't have been this 75-year Cold War, and there wouldn't have been China being supported by this Russian behemoth. But then, that was just too much to do. We already had Japan and Germany. Russia could be an ally. Alright, so about the AT-3 Sagar. The AT-3 Sagar anti-tank missile could knock out the heaviest tanks in South Vietnam. A two-man item carried a control box, which was one of the men slung the control box on his back, and up to 4 suitcases, each containing a 25-pound missile. The weapon could be set up in 5 minutes. Guided visually by the gunner, the missile was attached to the control box by 2 thin wires that reeled out behind after firing. Can you believe that? Remote control by wire? It's a missile. Okay? Sighting in on a flare in the missile's tail, the gunner used a joystick to pass signals to the missile jet nozzle that kept the Sagger on course. Wow, very low. It's like as low technology as you can get. The 3,000-meter range was limited by the gunner's eyesight, which made the effective range actually about 1,000 meters. So, interesting there. I'm going to give you a screenshot of it. There's the 133 millimeter field gun, the Strela SA-7, and the Sagger with the control box, and there's the missile. Alright, the next item is the T54 Tank, and they also had the ZSU-57, which was used to add an anti-aircraft capacity to the North Vietnamese. It's basically the T54 Tank with the regular turret taken off and an anti-aircraft set of double, really fast-firing guns. Now, I'd wondered about anti-aircraft. What's the difference between an anti-aircraft gun and a regular gun for shooting troops? And the anti-aircraft guns are high-powered and they shoot quickly, many rounds very quickly. So it's kind of like an enormous machine gun, slightly slow machine gun. But why couldn't you use them for battle on the ground? Well, it turns out that they didn't put the radar stuff in these tanks that an American anti-aircraft tank would have had. It would have had the ability to detect aircraft. So with these Soviet things, you could shoot if you could find and see it and everything, but you just didn't know. So what they used those for, as it turns out, was just big, powerful guns to shoot with. That's how they ended up employing the anti-aircraft capabilities. Now, they assigned T-54 tanks in groups of about 100 tanks for an armored unit. And it did have its drawbacks. It was much cheaper than the Western equivalent. Here were a couple of its drawbacks. It caught fire easily, and it had a short engine life. Now, how long would you think a diesel engine should last? Geez, I don't know. I mean, if you're talking about a modern truck, a rig, they can go 1,000,000 miles. It might have to be fixed up a little bit in between, but the essentials of an engine nowadays can go 1,000,000 miles. What do you think the Army was able to come up with 50 years ago? 150 to 500 hours. That's at 30 miles an hour top speed. That's not very long. And the engine is done after that, right? You've got to replace the engine. What a piece of crap. I mean, hello, what in the world? A tank that you have to... the engine's got to be replaced after running it for like a week? But still, they were better off having it than not having it. They were more effective fighting using it. Okay, next, the PT-76 tank, which is a... give you a quick screenshot. Smaller, less heavily armored. And then down here, the BTR-50 troop carrier, which we will get to right after the PT-76 tank. The North Vietnamese Army used tactics that employed the PT-76, one of the few fully amphibious tanks in the world. Like I said, it's smaller, less heavily armed. These lightly armored 14-ton vehicles made the initial reconnaissance probes in an attack. The 240 horsepower diesel engine ran hydraulic jets that propelled the tank through the water at 7 miles per hour. Its disadvantages: the PT-76 was hard to keep on course while swimming, and it sank easily in rough water. So there you are. Now about this troop carrier. The North Vietnamese also fielded some armored personnel